So you've heard me reference this in the past. Today we're going to elaborate on one of these points, real kind of in depth here for a minute. You've heard me talk about why I don't hang licking branches in mock scrapes or promote them on the side of food plots. And the reason is not that you can't get pictures there, not that it's not a place that you'll gather some inventory, but I am personally not a promoter of hanging trail cameras, period, on the food plots. Now, this goes back to having a high pressure hunting state of mind, and knowing that some of the viewers that are watching this, obviously you're in lower pressured states and you will be able to do these things and get away with them and have successful pictures, and you don't feel like you're impacting. But truth of the matter is, guys, I ran with this theory here in Michigan, all over the country, including Illinois and Iowa, and where I lived in Illinois. And I'm here to tell you that this method is something that is something to take to the bank all across the board. And it's just one piece of the puzzle. It's like the trail camera situation that we talked about, not cutting line of travel when you hang your cameras on a on a licking branch, not going across your trail to get to your camera. It's the same theory. It might not be a big issue to some, but it's one of those fine-tune finish points that a lot of people overlook, and that might be just the finish point that you need to be successful with, especially in a high-pressure state with a mature deer, that you can't get away with that stuff. So here we had one of these, and I did this for a reason last year. I hung this mock scrape on a mock scrape. You can see it's gone now, but I hung it here on this white pine right on the edge of our food plot. And last year the food plot was actually just kind of a starter, and it had we had put some rye, nothing major in it, and trying to get just the soil condition prepped. And we hung this on there. And this tree has actually been, I can show you here in a minute, this tree has actually, been a tree that they had rubbed on in the past. And so my theory was I really wanted to collect some information to bring to my viewers why I do this. So I hung it here. One, it's a white pine tree, and a lot of folks that I go to, I see right on the edge of the food plots. So I hung it there. I hung it up, about 6 foot up in this is, I know the video is kind of deceiving, but that tree is probably an 8-inch white pine tree. It's 25-30 feet tall. So the branches aren't huge, but they're not small. So I hung it on there, and I hung it on with one of our cottonwood whips, and opened the mock scrape up underneath it, and immediately, there were deer on it. The fact is I hung right behind it. I had a post, a T-post last year, and I like to hide my cameras, so I put a T-post. I put a bunch of brush. I actually took another white pine that I cut down, zip tied it to the T-post, and put the trail camera on it. I had my son and a few other people. My nephew were sitting in the blind, and they didn't know where the trail camera was, so it was a success on where I hit it. So it wasn't a camera seeing the camera issue. I can guarantee you of that. I have got trail cameras on both ends of this in transition areas. So my point is the information that I collected, I was getting pictures on this on the edge of the field, but I was getting 5 times more pictures of the same deer on my cameras on each end of this in the transition areas in the timber than I was on the edge of the food plot. And the majority of those pictures were the buck passing through, in the middle of the night, wee hours of the morning, right at daybreak, on his way to and from, or a couple different bucks on their way to and from this location. And it was not it wasn't a spot where last year it just had the rye in it, so it was just a bypass food plot, no holding points to it. So we actually hunted it, and now the blind is getting put in a gun situation. My bow blinds are already in place, but the rifle blinds or gun blinds are getting moved off the plot, so we don't, once it becomes a destination feed location, I do not hunt them. So perfect example. And the reason that I don't do that, guys, is the biggest thing that I can tell you is because when you come into these food plots, it's no different than, at that point, it's no different than a bait station or anything that brings you to their destination feed location and interrupts their that sanctuary effect of having this be a set-aside area for them, a food plot area where they're not bumped, they're not disturbed. And what it does is you leave scent. You have to come into this area, you know, whether you come in off a drive situation like we have here, down over the bank into it, whatever the case is, you're going to cut a line of travel getting in and out of that food plot to check the trail camera, unless you're side accessing into it and it's right on the edge of the plot, right in front of the stand, which if you are going to run them, hopefully that's the situation, not somewhere where you have to walk across the food plot to get to it. But the majority of it is, 9 times out of 10, that is what's happening, is folks are walking over to maybe a mineral site on the opposite side of the food plot. They are walking over to the best tree that was there, has nothing to do, no connection, nothing pertaining to the tree stand. And that's just the best spot. Maybe it's a pinch point, a funnel coming into the plot, etc. So what that does is it puts scent in your food plot. Scent creates pressure. Pressure creates nocturnal deer movement. And it sounds simple. It sounds maybe a little extreme. But I'm here to tell you that it's something that I right here's a perfect example. I did this for a reason last year. And just this week when I was reviewing some other stuff, I actually counted the numbers and just played around with some stuff. And it's about 5 times, like I said, the pictures on each end of this. So if I've got huntable transition areas on each end of a food plot that I am hunting and that I can hunt successfully, getting in and out of them because of side access and not cutting the line of travel, why do I need pictures on a food plot other than they're beautiful pictures? You get great pictures on the deer with a green food plot in the back. And I'm not saying it's not cool. I'm just saying that it's not functional. And once you, just one of those pieces of the puzzle is once you see this and you hunt those, I mean, my goal is to get my clients, and also, you know, the stuff that we do ourselves, hunt ourselves, as the object is to get pictures in areas that you're going to hunt, and to figure out when they're there, how they're coming into that. The camera's going to show you, if you're at it on video, it's going to show you exits and entrances and exits, how they're, you know, maneuvering around that scrape. On the side of a food plot, you've just got deer walking up to it out of the edge of the food plot because they were already on the food plot eating. It's already a destination. There's no need to hang a trail camera on there. And 1, take a chance of interrupting that. 2, it's not a point that you're trying to polish as a fit and finish in front of your let's say a bow stand, if any stand, but let's say a bow stand, where you're trying to figure out that movement. Is he there? Is he not? When are they there? On a food plot, the majority of your pictures that you're going to get in the first place are going to be in non-hunting hours. The further you go south, lower pressure states, Midwest, obviously you're going to have deer moving more and more, you know, relatively available, I should say, in the huntable or in the daylight hours. In a high pressure state, Michigan, Wisconsin, Minnesota, New York, New Jersey, that is not the case. So take that into consideration. If you're tuning in from, like I said, if you're tuning in from a high pressured state, if you're doing this, if you're one of those that are hanging your trail cameras or your licking branches on the edge of your food plots, just try that. Try to, you know, make sure that you've got, if you want to continue to run them, if you're going to run them on there, if you want to run those on here, the only way that I would recommend doing it at all is with a cell cam. That's the answer. That's the cure to it. And the reason that is because it takes you out of that equation of walking out here, walking across it, however that you navigate to get to it, takes that out of the equation. Then it's just another piece of the puzzle. But if it's a carded camera where you have to physically walk down there, you're doing the same thing as the video that I just released not too long ago of walking down to that you know, mock scrape, that licking branch, and leaving your scent there. And it's nature. We want to walk up to the scrape. We want to look at what's going on in the scrape. Is there tracks in it? Is there not? Next thing you know, you've pushed the envelope by even getting the card out of the camera to begin with. And like I said, if you're being stealthy, that's great. If you're walking across the food plots, you're you're shooting the purpose in the foot, if you will. So if you're going to do that in a high pressure state, I recommend making sure the camera that you're using is a cell cam. Hopefully you've got good service in the area where it's at. If it's not, I recommend taking it completely out of the equation and using those cameras in your transition areas. Like this one here, I have a stand on each end of it in transition areas, coming into the food plot, coming out of it for evening and morning sits, two different locations, and a third up on behind our doe bedding on a bench in the timber. So 12 acres, 3 stands, and 0 of them are on the plot. And that's how you keep these small. If you're dealing with a farm where you might just be a bypass farm to begin with, and you don't have a lot of holding power, one misstep, such as walking up and checking a camera on the edge of a food plot, leaving scent there, and having a mature buck bust that scent, or just puts him, he might not deter from it 100%, but if he deters from it 50%, that might take him out of that daylight equation. That in a high pressure state, you're really touching. It's a touch and go situation to begin with. And so that's the video today. Is something I see often, something that I researched last year here a little bit, just to have those numbers to bring to you, because I've always thought that, and I've always operated that way, but I've never really had a good number to go off from, like how much more do they actually use a camera and in the right spots, a licking branch in the right spots, and mock scrape. And that's the answer. It was 5 times more. And like I said, the pictures that I got here, some of them were beautiful pictures, but the majority of them were he was walking through. I got a video I'll show you where I've got multiple pictures of a mature buck last year walking through the food plot, and that never came to it anyway. And I've got some of them right in front of it, and I've also got video of 1 or 2 that spooked from it, and the only other pictures I got of those were on my other scrapes. Now this situation, my scrapes in my transition areas are the closest one here is about 75 yards, but the tree stand I access from over the ridge, and when I check that trail camera, that's just off my driveway, and I don't cut any line of travel to that one. And so that's kind of the power of just taking. It's just one of those simple steps that a lot of us high pressured state areas have to deal with. Excuse me, that other parts of the country don't. But it's one of those tools that if you use these tools, if you are in a lower pressured state, Illinois, Iowa, Kansas, Missouri, any of the Midwestern states, if you take these tips and you implement them from someone that is like myself, that's born and raised and lives in a high pressured state, and then travels to all over the country designing and implementing these properties. If you take these tips from someone that that lives and hunts and was born and raised in these conditions, you can benefit from these. I'm often asked, would you do this when I'm on a property? Would you do this if you were in Illinois? And the fact of the matter is, I design all my properties the same. I don't design a property with stands on a food plot or cameras on a food plot any different than I do in Michigan than I do in Illinois or Iowa. Like I said, can you get away with it down there? Yes, you can. You can get away with it a lot easier than you can up here, or in a high pressure state. The fact of the matter is, a 4-year-old deer is a 4-year-old deer, whether he lives in Michigan or he lives in the state of Iowa. It's the same mentality, and you only have so many options before you're busted on that. So on the opposite note, food plot's looking good, and just one of those videos that I wanted to touch with this morning. And every time I turn the camera, this eyesore here is driving me crazy, so I've got to get that moved off the as I'm sitting here talking about the food plot, the blinds and the cameras being on the food plots. That is leaving. The camouflage looks really cool on it, but it is leaving and getting moved now that this is the promoted into the plot that it's now turned into. So take that tip, guys. Like I said, that strategy isn't for everybody, and I understand that, but these things that I bring to you are stuff that I learned through the school of hard knocks, if you will, living in a high pressured state, designing and implementing these processes on even, you know, stuff that's in the Midwestern low pressured states. That is one of the steps right there that I see a lot of using, that I've taken myself out of that equation, and I'm here to tell you it's a huge, highly, you know, successful tool. Like I said, if you're going to do it, if you want, so you can tie the pieces of a transition area or a travel route together, such as here, I've got one on the back side of this doe bedding bench up on the top. We've got this one here that I had on the food plot, and then I've got the other one that transitions up into the other bench across and through the other part of the ridge, on the way to larger destination feed locations, and about a half a mile away. So it can complete the line of travel. The point here of the video is to just let you know that by checking these cameras when you check, there's no different than what I'm doing right here. I mean, I walked off the edge of the driveway from the truck, walk right down here, and I've not only cut the line of travel 2-3 times doing this video. It's in the summer, I won't be doing this in the fall, but you walk across that to get the camera, and the other 2 or 3 areas I never cut the line of travel, whether it's the summer or not. I'm never cutting them because they're established and hung in the right spots. And then you have one piece of the puzzle that is probably the most powerful piece of the puzzle, because it ties to your feed as far as interrupting movement, not as far as powerful as the point of impact that you're trying to hunt over. But that's just a missing link that doesn't need to be there. And they're already coming here. It's already a destination. They're here to feed. They're not here to communicate as far as the licking branches. That's not the power of them. The only thing that you're doing by hanging a licking branch on the side of these food plots anyway is to gather footage. Now, if they're doing it themselves out on the edge of the food plots, overhanging limbs, oak branches that are hanging down, that are left, that you keep on the side of the food plot, those are great. Let them do their thing on those overhanging limbs, pull them cameras off from them, and then connect that line of travel in your transition areas with your mock scrapes and licking branches. That's what I recommend. If you try this year, I think it's an eye opener. Anytime that I find something that's 5 to 1, it's a real eye opener to me in a high pressured state. So, like I said, take that to the bank, and just one of those tips that could seal the deal for you.